Hello to all my beautiful people. Welcome to our radio show, AAA Short Stories by Nelson Nick. Our main purpose is to work at the utmost to entertain you and enjoy all of our short stories. Prepare to enjoy our next episode about a little boy named Timmy. Thanks for being with us, and don't forget to click on I like it and follow us now or after the show. Now, NelsonNickTV.com presents
911. Timmy Wants to Kill Us. By Nelson Nick. Chapter 1. Central to Kilo 1. Go ahead, Central, answered Sergeant Nelson. Proceed out of the base, through the west gate towards the main street of Fort Walton Beach, in the residence section. The boss and Sergeant Pepette are on the way at this very same time. We received a call from 911 of a small girl, a 10-year-old by the name of Kitty. She claims that her brother Timmy was attacking everyone with an axe in the neighborhood. Central 10-4. Nelson made a rough U-turn with his truck in the middle of the road, burning tires while driving his dog nuts. Duke. You know that every time we're ready to go home, there's always something about an emergency. Get ready, boy. His German dog continued barking, moving side by side excited, while dripping saliva all over the back seat. Sergeant Nelson went code 3, lights and siren through the west gate of the base, at a high speed at about 9:01 p.m. The siren and the bright blue lights alerted everyone in their wake. Cars were moving to the side of the road. The K9 team turned right at the main entrance of the city. Nelson met and followed the chief behind his vehicle. The chief, Sergeant Stevens, drove with care because on the street they had vehicles parked on both sides. Several people drove their cars in both directions. Beautiful Christmas lights filled the streets with beautiful colors. The air was cold and crisp. Finally, they arrived and were the first policemen in the emergency area. Sergeant Stevens stopped in the middle of the road. The K9 team were about 20 feet behind the boss. From their vehicles, they heard screaming sounds from a house to their left. The cries and screams increased so much that instead of celebrating Christmas, it seemed like a surreal Halloween celebration. Timmy, a 95-pound redhead skinny little kid, was destroying kitchen windows with an axe at a house. He stopped for a second and noticed those flashing blue lights, quietly. After a few seconds, screamed like a maniac, and ran to Sergeant Stevens, swinging the axe in all directions, like a demented martial arts fighter. Stevens crouched in a football stance position, waiting for Timmy, while he held his right hand on his service revolver. Sergeant Pepette took out his gun and pointed the same at Timmy's body frame. Sergeant Nelson grabbed Duke, extracting his companion from the vehicle. Timmy arrived 10 feet from Sergeant Stevens, raised and launched the axe towards the head of the chief. The chief, a frightened officer, moved his body to a side and Timmy failed. The axe pierced the hood of the car and jammed into the damaged slit. Timmy slipped and landed under Sergeant Stevens. Stevens pulled this small child from the ground. When Timmy raised from the floor to this officer, a 230-pound, 6-foot officer of the military police of the United States Armed Forces and very well trained. Both fell to the ground and Sergeant Pepette joined the fight, trying to submit violent Timmy. Sergeant Nelson reopened the back door of his police car and put Duke back in, after seeing Timmy busting Stevens to the ground and throw Pepette aside, like a toy doll. Nelson was worried that Timmy could hurt Duke. Nelson joined the officers to help, to try to control this showdown. Timmy was an abnormally strong, fighting 3 officers of the police, that together weighed over 600 pounds. Finally, the handcuffs were placed on Timmy's wrists and legs. Timmy kept fighting and screaming uncontrollably. After a few seconds, Timmy broke the handcuffs from his wrists and fought with the officers, and again new handcuffs were placed, tighter than before. Stevens, Pepette, and Nelson joined together with their body weight over the maniac, avoiding Timmy from continuing, tearing his skin from those bloody wrists. The blood kept protruding from Timmy, insisted on freeing himself from his cold metal bracelets. Timmy didn't stop, he continued to fight with everyone and himself. The base ambulance had arrived with 2 technicians and a doctor. They joined in to provide treatment. They tried to subdue this hell of a child, when the demon broke the handcuffs again. Amazing! The doctor began to prepare injections of thorazine, some antipsychotics, and tranquilizers to calm Timmy's nightmare. They injected Timmy twice since the first ones didn't help as expected. While waiting for the drug's effects, Sergeant Nelson went to investigate for anyone else that would be hurt. He went to Timmy's house, as the other officials were attending Timmy and making sure he didn't blow up again. Timmy managed to kick the chief, throwing this man against the med techs and the physician, falling about 6 feet away to the frozen pavement. Timmy grabbed Sergeant Pepe by the hair, clenching his fists nice and tight, while he fell back down to the street. Pepe started screaming from the electrifying pain. Timmy, again for the third time, broke the chains of the handcuffs, transferring blood of his deep wounds everywhere. The boss, the techs, and Pepe worked fiercely, releasing the bear's grips from Pepe's hair, and this time some leather restraints were applied. Incredibly, Timmy, he was stronger than everyone else. The boss, weary and tired of so much struggle, said, "In 30 years being in the police, I have never seen a human being break steel handcuffs. Never." The doctor ran back to the group and injected over again the juice in Timmy's arm. There was no time for alcohol wipes. Timmy slowly released Pepe's hair and tried to bite the doctor, but failed in this brutal attempt. The cocktails began to take effect and the demon was no more. All first responders breathed deeply from an amazing, astonishing, and incredible experience. That a small child dominated many men with more than 800 pounds of weight, the weight of more than 4 men above the attacker. This was an event to be shared, for the mental health warriors. Using a straight jacket with ties and leather straps dominated a terror that broke steel handcuffs, never seen before.
Chapter 2. Joyce Singer, Timmy's mom, was in the wait for the police. Approaching her was Sergeant Nelson. Her daughters, Kitty and Kim, were trembling, weeping, as they hugged their mother from behind, terrified by a maniac who minutes before tried to kill them all. Anxiety and nervous breakdowns were very real. "Ma'am, are you okay? Is anyone hurt?" Nelson asked, while assessing the situation. "I don't think so. Is my son all right? Is he dead?" While the terrified women trembled and dragged their words. "No, ma'am, the doctor gave Timmy something to relax him and he's fine for now. He will be better when the doctors evaluate all of you at the hospital." The sergeant didn't tell them that Timmy was going to be interned based on the Baker's Act. With this act, medical teams put people who would do harm to oneself or would hurt others on observation for 72 hours. This is conducted in the Department of Psychiatry. This evaluation was for Timmy, who attempted murder on his family and others, destruction of property, including destruction to his neighbor's property. In addition, Timmy terrorized the neighborhood, attempted to assassinate the officers of the police and medical officials. "Ma'am, it's quite cold. You and the girls are shaking too much. Let's go inside to heat up and spend time to relax. Do you agree?" Nelson put his arms around Joyce and the girls, helping them into their warm home. After entering the house, Nelson saw holes in the inside of the door and numerous more in the walls of the hallway. It looked like 30 feet long of Swiss cheese. To the right of the hall, there was glass on the ground adjacent by the front windows. Broken glass was all over the room and up on the Christmas tree. There were numerous amounts of hollow holes in the living room. Some were as long as 8 inches long, a spooky experience. In the room everything was wasted. The furniture was leaning over other ones, lamps on the floor, more and more slits scattered all over additional walls, a terrifying image, a nightmare made reality. "What happened, Joyce?" asked Sergeant Nelson with a low and soft tone. "I don't know. He went crazy, attacked the girls and me with an axe. Then we ran to the bedroom, closed the door, and Timmy kept axing the doors. He just kept slicing everything. When I saw the axe breaking through the wood inside where we were, I told Kitty to call the police." The girls again began to cry uncontrollably, while Joyce explained the events to the officer. Nelson told them to breathe slowly and went to look for the doctor. Joyce and the girls needed medical attention. This was indeed an emergency. The doctor and Nelson returned to the family. The doctor proceeded to give them exams. "Joyce, may I observe the rest of the house? The doctor will evaluate you and the girls, while I look and evaluated the rest of the damage. Okay. She acknowledged yes, and the investigation continued with laboratory crime scene technicians from the local police. Opposite of the living room, to the left side of the hallway was the entrance to the bedrooms. Just entering this hallway was the first bedroom to the right and showed extensive damage from the axe. The center bedroom door was worse than anything else. This room was where Mom and the girls hid. The house contained 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, living room, and dining room. In the back courtyard you observed the pool with its lights shining over the trees. I looked inside the dorms full of the holes from the axe. The rest of the hallway and the home were not damaged. No one was killed or severely wounded. Still, a terrifying nightmare had happened by the baby of the house. Timmy destroyed his family's home, put holes on so many items that if it were a person, they'd bleed to death. Evidence of the axe were on top of the cars that were parked by the sidewalk and severe damage to the neighbors' properties. In addition, an axe hole was in one federal vehicle of the primary respondents and numerous assaults on police and the health officials. More police and investigators of Fort Walton Beach PD had arrived and took over the scene, since it was their jurisdiction. The Air Force Security Police and the base's medical teams were closer to the scene, and it was an emergency, so temporary jurisdiction was allowed. Time was of the essence.
Final chapter. Several weeks had passed and the investigation concluded that Timmy's life, studied under a microscope, was a victim of angel dust, or phencyclidine. No one ever found out how he had it in the bloodstream. He was a straight A student, a nerdy boy, a real angel. Timmy was no drug user of any kind. That tragic night, Timmy did not hear or feel, had no regard for life, property, or police authority. After that night, his family, his friends, neighbors, police, and medical authorities were added to the victims of post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD. What a pity. You could never imagine a well-educated boy, normally quiet like Timmy or any child of that age, becomes a terror, while the community prayed for their lives. The evidence discovered, from these weeks ago at the moment, proved that there were some new drug dealers in neighborhood schools. They were selling angel dust mixed in marijuana, cocaine, and pills. This powder itself was also on money throughout the community, which was also discovered in the money that Timmy had in his pants. Timmy was the victim of drug abuse by accident. The Narcotics Division from the police department continued with the research, and the case against Timmy was dismissed with a court recommendation that all those who were involved in one way or another, to get psychiatric aid. It doesn't matter who you are. Anyone who goes through an experience like Timmy's nightmare, and all the people involved would go through PTSD, trained or not. Illegal substances can create a monster out of an angel. As the saying goes, say no to drugs. The end.
This was a production of NelsonNickTV.com, NNTV13newsmagazine.com, bensound.com for the music, soundbible.com. For sound effects and for special effects to Emmanuel Exiga, Daniel Simeon, to Microsoft.com for the narrators, written, produced and directed by Nelson Nick. Thank you for allowing us in your home, your vehicle, or in the piece of your location. Thanks again. Don't forget to click on like, and follow us.
You've got mail.